Hello, Heathens.
Hello, Heathens.
We're getting this show on the freaking road because Thursdays are very busy.
Busy, busy, busy.
And today we're talking about our outer planets. They call them the transcendental planets, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. And we are 12-year-old heathenistic boys that are going to say Uranus
Your
a lot.
anus, your
We know it's not
anus,
correct. We don't
your
care. It's
anus,
funny.
your anus. We grew up with Uranus. Do you know what I mean? Because like
Yes.
every time somebody, and it's just been recently in the last maybe decade that like people have changed it because especially because astrology has gotten so popular. So they've like literally changed it to Uranus, which is so funny to me because the first time that I had heard Uranus, I thought it was a new planet that I didn't fucking know about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I was
do.
like, oh, Uranus?
You said, wait,
What
what's
is
that?
that? I haven't heard of that before. Like, I remember saying those words out loud. In fact, I think you might have been there because it was when we met Beverly Fish.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was there.
Right. So
Yup.
I was like, Uranus? Wow.
That's when I didn't actually know my true time of birth and nothing made sense for what she was saying. I was like, I just like this is not hitting home. And then I found out later, oh, that's because I gave her the wrong time of birth and I had like a bunch of Leo placements and all this stuff and I was like so confused because I was like, I just don't, but then it wasn't her, it was me. I didn't know my time. I will never forget that reading. And then I was like, damn.
Damn.
Damn. Okay, Pluto, Uranus, and
And Ken,
Neptune.
another thing I would like to say that you and I were just discussing was the fact how seen we feel with these outer planets. And I thought they weren't that, not that I, this is going to make me sound really bad, but not that I didn't think they were that powerful. I know that they are, or they're, I just didn't, oh, it's generational. I just didn't think it was personal, right?
Yeah, because
Fuck
usually,
me.
same, dude. Usually, when you think about it, you don't think about the outer planets. You do think about
Right.
it being generational. Granted, we're not traditional, like, we don't read natal charts, so it's probably very, very different for somebody who reads that. But for us having limited knowledge, you only focused on your inner planets. And even
Hmm.
Jupiter and Saturn were ones that you were like, man, like, yeah, I love them. And I'm like, they're super important. I
Right.
didn't realize how important Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus were either because, God, we'll read some of them from our charts too, because, like, my God, the way that it just like nails you.
Well, and I don't know if it's because our outer planets are literally in our, and granted, this is a generational thing. So a lot of people in your generation and in my generation, they're going to hit home as well, just because we're all going to have these placements in our first couple houses.
Right.
Well, yours being 12, 1, 2, like it's all that first half of that side of that pie, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Fascinating.
It's so good. I'm excited to
Hmm.
talk about the when I was researching it this morning, I was really into it. It's like, oh my God. It's so fascinating.
You're like, yes. So a little bit of mythology that we have, Uranus was actually, I didn't realize this, but Uranus was the father of Kronos, of Saturn.
Yeah.
So it even goes further, and he also ate his children. So now we see a pattern of like these gods fearing the fact that their own children are going to take over.
Hmm.
So I wonder if that plays out in our own like human evolution too. Like our parents are always thinking that we are outdoing them and like it just is always that cycle.
Probably because Uranus is a planet that is one of the big symbols for it is progress
Oh yeah, that would make sense.
and
And
like
this is
disruption.
I do correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if you know this, but this would be the deity that actually fathered Aphrodite. Uranus was the sky,
Yes, I believe
mom
so.
guy was the earth. He got his genitals ripped off, cut off into the sea, and boom,
Yes.
bam, boom. So she was actually made from a Titan, and that is why she's so powerful. She's like, Hecate is also made from Titans.
Well, and where did I just read this too? Because they were, here it is. Like, oh no, that's not what I was gonna
No.
say. No, no, no. No,
Mm-mm.
no, no. Well,
No.
the part of that too is that, while Saturn is all about preserving tradition, Uranus is about bulldozing old structures to create a new paradigm. And I'm like, with that in the story, I was thinking about that too, where I'm like, because Saturn is who's the guy that goes with Saturn? I can't remember.
Hold on. Chronos.
Yes, but Kronos is different than Uranus, right?
Yes.
I don't know Greek mythology that well,
I
or
think,
Roman.
well, so I think Uranus is just, that's his name from the Roman. I don't know if the Greek gods have, they probably do.
Oh, Uranus is the father of Kronos.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that's just his name.
So Kronos and Aphrodite are brother and sister.
Chrono. Yes.
Hmm, interesting.
Yes. Because she wasn't born until he died. So he didn't get a chance to eat her.
Ah, how interesting. Are you looking up more of the mythology?
I was just kind of seeing or going over this to see if Uranus, it was named after the Greek god Uranus. So Uranos, Uranus, right?
Sure. Yeah,
A,
that's what I would say.
a Titan whose son Saturn castrated him and then cast him out of the heavens. But astrology observes a new planet and saw little despotism. Despotism.
Mm.
I'm just making up words now. Um, on the contrary, they said the Uranus seems to act as a disruptor of old orders. Observably, it is very discovery upset the eons old notions of a seven planet system. Moreover, the discovery roughly coincides with the French and American Revolution.
Hmm.
Astrology has concluded that Uranus would have been better named Prometheus. The name means forethinker. For the Titan who gave humans the gift of fire, the source of all human progress. In Promethean's terms, Uranus significates creative energy and breaking of old models of belief and actions. I think that pretty much. So this is where we're going to look at in our charts. This would be where we're going to try and um break down old patterns. This is where we can really use this kind of energy to break down those walls and those disbeliefs that are no longer serving us.
Mhm. See.
Let's see. What is it? Where is it in my chart?
Um, while you're
The
looking that
second.
up, this is also the planet of science too. So like Where Mercury is going to be associated with technology, Uranus is often referred to as like the higher octave of that in some astrology. So it's leading it to be a symbol of electricity and like the internet as well. Um, so like originality, inventions, computers, cutting edge technologies, and future events are all ruled by this planet. But this planet can also be called the planet of rebellion. So that's like where you're talking about this is where we like cut down those old things to make new. You're essentially it's like the rebellious planet. So
Mhm.
again, Uranus sees no need for the status quo and it prefers to break with tradition and create new molds. So while the building blocks are safe, like science and electricity, this planet would rather focus its gaze on like a whole new world order. And that's going to be to the end of like rebellion, revolution, dictators, an autonomous state, where meaning like you're your own being, and free will all fall under the protection of this planet. So like this is also where freedom and creativity are important to this planet too. Astrology lives within the realm of Uranus, and Uranus actually rules earthquakes and other natural disasters, which I didn't know.
Wow. Which
Um,
makes sense because that would be destruction of like old structures, right?
yeah. And like what you know, when most of the time, like you think about an earthquake, yeah, of course, like there's damage, but then it leads to new building.
It's supposed to have damage.
Yeah, it's the breakdown. I thought about the tower card a lot during
Yeah, yeah. This would
this
be
planet.
tower card of moments, right? Like, because the thing is either we've been taught to fear change and progress because of the destruction part. We've gotten so into, from what I have observed, we've gotten so into keeping things the way they perfectly are. And think about this like as we're doing yard work. We are always trying to tame that chaos, right? Because if you let it go, it's completely chaotic, right? You have weeds everywhere, your bushes are crazy, everything is just overgrown and like this is that kind of thing. And we're trying to like structurize it and be like, oh no, we have to keep all the weeds out, blah blah blah. And
Yeah,
it's very structured and blah, blah. So this is the dance between order and structure in real time when we're
yeah,
looking at it. Hmm.
absolutely. Um,
Oh, where I
also,
was going, hold on, sorry.
oh no,
I
go ahead.
forgot where the point I was actually trying to make with this
Yes.
is that so we've been taught to try to keep everything exactly the same all the time, and that's where we keep safe. We even teach our babies to like, oh, they need the same thing over and over and over again, like the structure, right? The ritual, because that's
Mhm.
how we feel safe. And then the funny thing is, anytime somebody's misplaced something, we're like, oh my God, my life is in shambles. Like we lose our shit because we don't know how to deal with that kind of change and progress.
Yeah,
So this is where we want to stay in the middle because we want a little bit of structure to keep our feet on the ground, but we also want to be able to move that structure when it no longer serves us. And that's how we use the power of this planet in a balanced sort of way.
heck, urgent, sis. Urgent. Um, So the only other few things I have before we like go into like a little bit of reading what Uranus actually did like generationally and personally is it takes Uranus 84 years to complete its trip around the zodiac. That's why it's considered generational because it stays in
Mm-hmm.
signs for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
an androgynous energy, meaning it can be both feminine and masculine, and it rules Aquarius in the 11th house. Um, and in your chart, this planet reflects your sense of uniqueness and which relationships or areas of life you'll experience chaos or liberation, rebellion, or like really good genius insights. Um, and reading these and what they like do is so, let me pull these up. What is your Uranus in? Again, it's Scorpio, right?
Scorpio in the second house. Yep.
So, Scorpio is going to be like a psychic watery sign, and Uranus emphasized taboo topics and matters of psychology, sex, death, and rebirth, right? So, following the focus of equality and relationship dynamics that Uranus and Libra emphasize, the Uranus and Scorpio generation dedicates much of its energy to reading between the lines of human behavior. So, as a Scorpio Uranus native, you feel strong attraction attraction to forbidden knowledge and obscured information. So you're prone to dig for truths. And from your generation's perspective, knowledge is power. So as
Mhm.
a Mars ruled sign, Scorpio symbolizes volatile reactions and the expiration of things. So in fact, the world was in a Uranus and Scorpio transit when the mechanisms of oxidative damage caused by free radicals in living cells was discovered. So traditionally, Scorpio Mars ruled signs with the natal Uranus here, the discovery of secrets arms you with options. So knowledge can be a weapon and you can use it when you need to, especially when pushing to make radical or revolutionary changes happen. The element of surprise is a tool you can wield masterfully, and knowing that there's always more that meets the eye keeps you vigilant and ready to adapt to life's curveballs. Perceptivity is one of your greatest strengths, and it's during a Uranus and Scorpio transit that the X-ray was discovered. So, through methods of therapy and safe self-analysis, you learn to pick out patterns and empathize with others. Understanding why others do what they do is important to this generation. And while teachings of various schools of psychology play a role in the way you relate to participate with the rest of society, you find enlightenment through sexual encounters and the circle of life. Yours is a generation that dissects taboos and eats them for breakfast. Uranus in the planet of change and in the sign of Scorpio, which is all about metamorphosis, you possess the courage to go through life's many life-altering transformations head first. Damn, son. So that is Uranus and
Mic drop.
Scorpio is 1975 to 1981.
1970, yeah, so because I was born in 1977. Which is very interesting because we do talk about Generation X being very much like, you know, not fucked with because we will tell you stuff like that and will hurt your feelings. And, you know, as sensitive as we become, we still need that kind of like mother figure
Yeah.
ish, right? Because the problem with like, I'm going to say this the best way I can do it, and it's going to be triggery, but I'm sorry. Um, with the boomers, we see them using a more cold approach to like, you're not supposed to do that, get off my lawn, that kind of thing, right? Where Generation X, we see more of a like, we're not going to tell you about yourself until you step over a boundary. And then, but then the thing that we're saying is true. We're not telling you to get off our lawn. We're telling you that like you're doing this because you don't like your mother. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the kind
Yes.
of like
We're doing this because you don't like you. We're telling you you don't like mom.
right, right.
Huge
Like
trauma.
like if you have an intruder in your house, you're like all of a sudden you're in a therapeutic moment of like, well, this goes back to the fact that you weren't held enough as a child and like they walk out crying. Like that's more of what we're making you cry.
Yes. Now, to where millennials can be categorized into two, because Uranus was in two signs during millennials, where it's like
Okay.
1981 to 1996. So Uranus was in Sagittarius for the first half of millennials, and the second half is Uranus in Capricorn, which is mine. And it says, as a generation, you're unsatisfied with the notion of following tradition, especially if it was if a perspective is dogmatic, meaning like laying down the law. As a
Yeah.
Uranus and Capricorn native, you offer necessary yet practical ideas to change the worlds of business, government, and other long-standing structures that pose as a source of authority. People with Uranus and Capricorn likely do not have traditional jobs. This is a generation that came of age as offices became open plan. These aren't people with your typical 9 to 5. They're very well may prefer to be their own boss, make their own rules, or have an unconventional approach to business. And before I keep reading, you see this a lot the TikTok world. There's a lot of
Yeah.
millennials on the TikTok world, in the TikTok
Yep.
world, and
Yep.
there was a huge
They're
movement. Was it
influencer.
yeah, like was it right after quarantine, I think when LLCs became like pretty popularly talked about on TikTok?
Right, right. Well, because that's what everybody needed to do,
Yeah.
right? Because businesses were shut down and they still needed money. And then
Yep.
because it's not like the bill stopped,
Right.
right?
Yes. So that's your
So,
like Neptune or
Real
Uranus and Capricorn energy.
real quick. Millennials get a lot of shit, right? And the thing is that you guys are really doing the job that you're supposed to be doing. You're showing us that there's another way to work a job. You're showing us that you don't have to kill yourself to actually be happy. And, like Generation X, I think we're always trying to please the parents, right? Like we're always trying to like be that scene well, like we're always trying, and that's why we kill ourselves in a 60-hour job and we to our deficit, right?
Yeah.
Where millennials have come in and saw this from either their parents or siblings, and they're like, no, we don't want that. We really have learned how to, most of you, right? This is like a most of you kind of thing,
Yes.
or the energy that's being brought in is like you have these people like, no, we are only going to work 8 hours and you are not allowed to call me later. And I will not answer that email afterwards because I'm out kayaking and I only need 8 hours to live.
Yep.
These are the people that don't necessarily need all the things.
Yeah, and in reading the rest of this too, exactly what you're saying is exactly this kind of like Uranus and Capricorn energy. Because like you're spot on, because it says this is a placement that takes their idiosyncrasies seriously, which can result in dry humor. This is a generation dealing with a lot of student loan debt and one that is wary of the ups and downs of the market since their first opposition occurred during or just after the 2008 financial crisis. They understand that material structures can be unpredictable and wavering as nature runs its course. This can find the Capricorn Uranus natives skeptical of things that seem traditional or set in stone, since they know that these things are all risky, even if they appear to be stable. They are all too aware that change is inevitable and making it their business to help push whatever changes are necessary, regardless of how long something's been done a certain way. Be it
Hmm.
an institution, law, or strategic plan, if a structure's foundation is built on weak grounds, this is the generation to bulldoze it over with something stronger and more reliable so that it can be put in place. Like, damn.
Yeah. And see, this is exactly what we're saying. And of course, you guys are going to get a lot of shit for this because the structures don't like to, we don't find the value in decay and change and transformation, right? We think
Right.
that everything is supposed to stay the same all the time. This is the way it is. And I really think that's the energy that we have going out of the world right now with like the boomers getting older and starting to push that energy out. And they had their purpose and their plan. Like they're not bad.
Right.
It's just the fact that that's how they had to survive in the world that they were in.
Right. And this is why I also feel like millennials and Gen X, which is your generation, are so closely tied because Gen X is able to move through that. They're able to continue, they see what millennials are doing and they're able to play both sides with the, boomer, the millennial side. And now we have what Gen Z coming in,
Right,
and
right.
that's an even bigger change. And it's like
Hmm.
Gen X and a lower or younger, guess I should say, is able to move so easily. And a lot of that has to do with our Uranus placements.
Right, right. And it's so refreshing to see. You can see evolution if you look hard enough. You can see it if you step back a little bit and you look at the progress that we have made as humanity. We get so caught up in saying that we hate humans and, like, oh, it's too humany out there, and we make fun of it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's great. And I've done it too. Like, but we're doing really well as humans. And I want to really like give us all a a pat on the back, as corny as that fucking sounds, but like, there is hope for humanity. And if you look hard enough and you stop looking at the wrong things and we look at what we've actually fucking accomplished with all of the stuff that we have to do.
All the changes we've experienced in the last 20 years that alone.
Right, which is a lot because if you think about it and you look at this is why history is so important because none of us want to think or we don't value history. The one thing about history that I've really found as looking back is how much that we've had to change just in the last century. From
Yes.
the 1900s to the 2000s, look at the leaps that we've made. And then if you look at like the 70s to 2024, like the amount that like we have like changed into just like indoor plumbing and like uh computers and cars and clothing and the way we talk to each other and what we like all this stuff that we've like really like honed in on medicine, like how big medicine has gotten and how um now I do feel like at this point that we're going to the detriment side of it, but like we've had this arc where we've went so up and now we're doing a collapse of the wave is how I kind of feel about it. But I really
Yeah.
think we should give each other like a pat on the back because like evolution wise, I think we're doing really good.
Heck yeah, I agree. And like, that like whole Uranus is going to show you like what needs to collapse and what needs to be new. Uh, it's not been comfy. Nobody said it's going to be
No.
comfy when it happens, but it has been happening. We've been seeing different changes, even just in like our perspectives and the way that we think old systems and old beliefs that are no longer welcomed in this world that we have to go through. And like, yeah, it sucks when you feel those old beliefs or things that, could be harmful for you. But like it's good to have it out in the light so that we can work towards a better oneness.
Absolutely. And I think really part of this is like we really need to focus on the fact that what is right for you may not be right for somebody else, but holding the space of like and not being attached to like and feel attacked just because somebody does have a different opinion than you.
Yep.
Like we right now we have this influence almost that is wafting over humanity about like I have to argue the fact that if you're not going to believe the way that I believe, I must attack that.
Attack.
Attack. And it's like, well, why? Why? Like, why are you just because I've decided that this is my thing that I want to do doesn't make yours wrong.
Right. And at the end of the day, you don't know who's going to be on the right side of it because
Well, ain't that the fucking truth right
you
there?
don't know.
Because you absolutely don't know.
You don't know. And take it with humility. It's easy to be like, oh fuck, well, I definitely didn't choose the right option there. Okay.
Well, and it goes down to even as little as like, I had a conversation with somebody and I remember having these feelings come up in me. And I know part of that is like my own insecurity and stuff, but like I know this has got to be a generational thing too, is the fact that somebody was, telling a story and they're like, "Oh, she's just a really pretty girl. She doesn't use any makeup and blah blah blah." And I'm instantly like, "Oh, I'm not pretty. I'm wrong. I wear makeup." Like,
Yeah.
oh, and it's like, "Oh, wait, I don't have to. That's not an attack. That's just a statement."
Right.
And I think like if we really sat down and got back to the art of communication is really where we need to go back into and being like, this is how you communicate and this is how this goes. And I think we've lost that art form.
Dude, and there's such good books out there for that. Like even one of my favorite books that really changed a lot of the way I try to talk to people, especially in friendships, relationships, is nonviolent communication, where you're like not attacking all the time and you're aware. It's the awareness of how you speak and the things you say.
Absolutely.
And that book helped a ton.
Well, and this goes back to, communicate with like no, I didn't, and you're defending yourself and you're doing this, but then instead of leaning into it and asking questions, like, well, why do you feel this way? And I was watching this, I've been watching this thing about dealing with people with dementia
Mm.
because that's where I'm at. And it's very illuminating because like even the fact like you can use this in your if you're not dealing with a parent that has dementia, you can use this in your everyday. It is this non-attacking kind of way of like relating with people. So like they use this example of like, well, you cheated on me. And I know this happens in dementia type of people, and they bring up these scenarios, and it's very damaging to all parties involved, right?
Yeah.
And, immediately the caregiver gives into like, no, I didn't. This is crazy. What are you talking about? And they do it from this place of attackment instead of like being curious about like, well, why do you think that? And do you want to talk about this now? And instead of saying yes or no kind of communication, we're now evolving into, well, are you okay? Do you want to talk about this now? Are we
Mm.
like, do you know what I mean? Instead of like, it's a very more compassionate way of like really getting into like this conversation instead of being immediately attacked and immediately putting up your defense mechanisms, right?
Yeah, that's really cool.
The great thing about this is that a lot of times we give more compassion to people with labels. And I think that's why labels have gotten, more popular because now we label everything. We're like, oh, label, 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 autistic, ADHD, dementia. Like we have all these like labels, right? Which I get why we do it. The problem is those aren't set in stone. We need to like use them more as like water. We need to use them more as like, oh, okay, that's cool, and move on. Um, because if somebody's having a problem with somebody that they love, I always say it like this. Well, if they had dementia or Alzheimer's right now, which they don't, it's just used as like a metaphor. um, how would you actually approach that person instead of approaching it like butting heads?
Yeah.
You know,
It's just,
ask.
it's meant to be a trigger into a different thought.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah. You're just trying to trigger them to think differently to hopefully help them to like get a different perspective so that they can get the outcome they want.
Right.
As opposed to being like, well, yeah, fucking fight them, fight them.
Yeah, you got to fight it to get it
You could,
right. And it's
the
like,
only way you
no,
could do this is if you fight them.
we don't have to fight anymore.
What do you mean? War. Fight
War.
him.
Like the only way I'm right is if I fight you and I win. And it's like, no, that's not how we're doing it anymore.
Yeah, because we've learned that if you fight them and you win, sometimes you lost a leg and now you're an amputee. Metaphorically.
Absolutely.
You lost something that meant something to you. You got damaged.
Well, and then we go back to guilt and shame, and now you're actually like carrying around guilt and shame, which will damage you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Moving on.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move into Neptune. We'll save Pluto for last. Okay, so what I got? Neptune rules the oceans of the earth.
What?
Neptune's glyph on your natal chart is the trident of Poseidon, god of the siege.
God so he is the Roman god is Neptune. Poseidon would be the Greek god. God of fresh water in the seas. Hold on. Oh, okay. He's brother to Pluto. That's what it was. His symbol is the trident, the dolphin, and the horse. Um, Parents were Saturn and Ops. I don't know who Ops is. Ops.
Is this Roman mythology?
This Did
Yes.
they say yes?
The
Because
Roman
it's
goddess
Saturn.
of the earth.
Oh.
She's a Roman version of the Greek goddess Rhea. There you go.
Oh, okay. So, um, the horse is interesting too, and I'm not quite sure how to get it, but I have seen it a little bit like in Lord of the Rings when they call upon the waters, it comes in as horses. Also when Poseidon raped Medusa, she actually gave birth to Pegasus. That's how Pegasus was born.
Mm, I did not know that.
It
No, I
was
did
to, I
not.
think she also gave birth to the Minotaur.
That would make sense.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what I have too is this is going to be your planet of changeable and illusionary in nature. Your changes in nature, your illusions in nature. This is dreams, illusions, abstract thought, and the mysterious are all governed by Neptune. Our spirituality is really important to this planet and how we harness that energy for our personal betterment. But Neptune can also have a disorienting effect, making it hard to stay in touch with what's real when we lean too much into that spiritual side, which we've talked about before. And you can get really, really lost and
Yes.
not even know what's real anymore if you don't
Yes.
keep a
These are
container.
these are the people that get really lost in like conspiracy theories, and
Yes.
not that there's anything wrong with conspiracy theories, but you have to make sure you have an anchor,
Yes.
because if not, you're going to end up being those person that's putting tinfoil over their windows.
Yeah. Yeah. People with strongly placed Neptune in their chart make great therapists, shamans, and healers. Neptune invites us to let its energy wash over us to use as a meditative state to gain insight and heightened awareness. Poetry, music, and dance are going to be involved in this planet as well. It rules over movie, television, theater, fashions, and all forms of glamour.
Mhm.
The shadow side of Neptune is drugs, alcohol, trances, and hypnosis. Neptunian energy also reeks of escapism on its really dark days, and it could be a sea of delusion,
Mhm.
hypochondria, or abnormalities.
Mhm.
Neptune takes 165 years to complete its whirl around the zodiac.
Oh,
165
wow.
years. It spends about 14 years in each sign. Holy crap.
Wow, that's crazy.
Dude,
Because
that
that's
is
almost two life forms for it to get around. Like, two life, that's crazy.
crazy. Um, Neptune is a feminine energy and rules Pisces in the 12th house. This Neptune's known as the higher octave. So like how Uranus was the higher octave of Mercury, right? Neptune's known as
Mm-hmm.
the higher octave of Venus and is the second of the transcendental planets. Um, this is where like your creativity comes from again. It's like where we're gonna tap into our the right brain and release logic and letting pure creative impulse flow through us. And this planet dissolves boundaries as well. Um, which I did not know, but this is like where it reminded me a lot of Jupiter actually, and I know there's not like a big technically astrology like pairing
Connection.
connection. Thank you, that's
Yeah.
the word I wanted. But like this is a good example of how it reminded me of Jupiter is I read this person said compassion runs deep with Neptune, but it can also turn into codependency if we aren't careful. And I was like, yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
like Jupiter, where Jupiter just wants to you jump. It doesn't matter where you're jumping. She just said, jump, jump, jump off that edge. That's kind of like what I feel like with Neptune is if you like get too much into your Neptunian energy, you're going to be like, you know, getting into the darker sides of things where it's like too much of a good thing isn't great. Go.
Well, you
But
lose yourself because think about it. Like if you marinated in water for a very long time, you would end up dissolving, really.
yes.
So this is exactly the same thing, is this being too much in fantasy, in illusion, you would lose the sense of yourself and your boundaries and everything because you're so immersed in this like watery element. Like,
Yeah, because so like Neptune can dissolve your ego, but a
hmm
dissolve your ego being completely decimated can lead to a loss of self, right? And then all of a
absolutely.
sudden we're having a fucking midlife crisis of whatever life crisis because are we talked about ego a long time ago about how we need it. And if it's completely gone, you have no fucking idea who you are, what you're doing in this world, why you're here, like where you're going.
Right. Ego helps us to drive and ego helps us keep us safe. And that's the thing is ego when we were made, I feel like ego had a very exalted job where it was like, hey, there's a saber-toothed tiger, or hey, don't eat that because that will kill you. You know, like ego had a job.
Yes.
Well, we have pretty a comfy lifestyle at this point. Like we don't have predators per se. No, we're not out there. Like it's like you have to take a spear with you every time you go to work. You know, it's not like you're like, oh, there's a tiger. Like, you know, we don't live in those kind of places. We have very cushy kind of lives. And so ego tends to like I also notice like if ego and Neptune are working together, that's when, and probably in your chart some way, is that's when you would be like there's a ghost around every corner, or there's a murderer every parking garage. There's, you know, and women, I think, definitely have been taught this from the get-go because, like, we, if we go out at night, especially my generation, like, if we go out at night, you're going to get murdered and raped.
Yep.
So
It's
don't
not
go out at
safe.
night.
Darkness
Right.
is scary.
Don't wear that because, you're going to attract attention to you and then you're going to come have harm. Um, it's very, it would be very interesting. Like, how would you think that we could use Neptune as our beneficial? Like, how do we use the power of Neptune?
So, it can show your attitude towards addiction,
Hmm.
and how you relate to like mind altering substances. And you can also, it can show your need to release attachments, but also know where you need to be more grounded to logic into your like decision making as well.
So, for example, if we look at my placement, it's in the third house in Sagittarius. So, how would that play out?
So you could look at it one of two ways, right? You could look at it at your house or like just like in that sign, but yours is in the third house or second house,
Third house.
Neptune.
Yep.
Okay. So the third house, it's also goes along with Gemini because Gemini and the third house go together. And it
Hmm.
says you're a compassionate communicator who exudes genuine charm. People love talking to you. Gemini and the third house are associated with reading, writing, and our mental processes. Neuroscience and human psychology fascinate you, which could lead you to a healing profession that involves talk therapy, interactive coaching, or leading mind shifting workshops that teach people how to change their lives simply by shifting the way that they think about their circumstances. Participating in these modalities is also essential to your inner growth. So that's like your third house. And what was the sign again?
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Okay. So Neptune in Sagittarius or in the ninth house, um, is where your imagination reigns supreme. So this is where the Lulu could come in, right? So you're more likely to be unstructured, spiritual and free flowing in this part of life, but you might also have moments that you feel gripped by inexplicable, A lot of fear. A lot of
It,
fear. You might feel gripped by a ton of fear.
inexplicable.
Yes. Since Neptune is associated with therapy and healing, the house it falls in can give clues about your inner work, right? Which is why you're really good at talking to people, but as well as give you ways to give back to the world through charitable giving. Through why am I struggling through sometimes painful experiences? Neptune teaches you how to set boundaries, but first it dissolves them, creating lessons in self-compassion and codependency alike. Does it all sound like a head trip? Yep, that's fast, a fantasy agent Neptune trying to get the pretty colors while you spin the cosmic kaleidoscope.
Yes. Like I said,
Yeah.
very seen in this whole.
Yeah.
I'm
So
like,
mine is
oh.
also in Sagittarius, but it's in the second house. No, that's yours. I'm sorry. Why do I keep doing that? My Neptune's in Capricorn in the 11th house.
Yes.
So it being in the 11th house is says soulful. Creative Neptune is naturally at home in this driven ambition placement. But once you learn to combine these forces, you can strike quite the powerful chords. Much of Neptune's influence may be channeled towards your career. You may be you may feel called to do something meaningful that heals the world in a large scale or public way. Changing the system from within is not an impossible dream for you. Many people born with Neptune and Capricorn are radically altering corporate cultures as we speak, creating office
Hmm.
environments that are purposeful,
Hmm.
nimble, and humane.
See, and
And
this
then,
is what we're seeing in society. Like your whole generation is totally doing this, right?
yes. And like the
Yeah.
downside of that, with it being in Capricorn, it also means though that we give too much to the workplace. Like
Right.
literally stay early, come in early, stay late, give time outside of that to the workplace too. But then
Right. Right.
we talked about Uranus just now. That's back in that Neptune saying, dude, what are you doing? We gotta change this up. We gotta make it easier for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this isn't efficient. We need to change it. Like, come on, let's go. We're
Yep.
evolving. Remember, we're evolving every minute of every day. Like that's the thing. It's like if you sit down too much, your body literally adjusts. That's called evolution. So,
Yes.
you start working out, your body changes. That's called evolution. It literally changes all the time. It's so minute that we don't see it.
Yeah. Well, and then what also goes along with this generation too is our Neptune being in Capricorn, but also in the 11th house. The 11th house is where
Yes.
half grew up without technology, came in with technology half in our like teenage years. We
Right.
were like the first generation that started really not living without the internet or video games or mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Mm-hmm.
that transport of technology allows to escapism too
Absolutely.
through your
Yeah.
electronic devices. And that's where we have to be careful with our Neptune in the 11th house, is that's where doom scrolling just really comes into play.
Right, right, right. Well, and then with the Capricorn in there, like you're gonna have that like mother or father figure in that realm. So that's also where you get to beat yourself up as well. So doom scrolling, and then the parent comes in and goes,
Yep.
right.
Yep. So the only thing I have left for Neptune is that Neptune is limitless. So visions can be pure bliss or they can descend into nightmares. Limitless.
Welcome to my whole entire life. Okay, we got Pluto now,
Pluto.
which in Greek mythology is Hades.
Yeah, I read that. Pluto was the god of the underworld, the equivalent of Hades in Greek mythology. So the association between the planet Pluto and like sex and jealousy stems from Pluto's obsession with and kidnap of Persephone.
Absolutely.
And then like the rulership over the underworld is why we associate the planet Pluto with secrets, darkness, and all things hidden.
Right. And it's interesting to me because this came to me just recently because, Pluto, because they said that it's not a planet. They tried to get rid of the underworld. Do you know what I mean? Like they're
Mm.
trying to get rid of the fact like it doesn't exist. It's not real. like da da da, like all that darkness and what we've configured as negativity and evil and like all that kind of stuff. And the other thing is that could be is because like if it's trying to be hidden, that would be another like aspect of like, oh no, we're gonna make sure it's over there and hide it away.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting because when I was listening to I Know Thyself, and Daniel was like, if you think Pluto is not a planet, you're gonna be seriously wrong because Pluto is gonna blow your shit up no matter what. Like,
Yeah, literally.
whether you label it as a planet or not as a planet, he doesn't give a fuck. He is gonna do it anyway. Like,
Yup. Yeah, because it was in 2006 when they demoted it, and they can now consider it a dwarf planet. But the thing to remember is that astronomy and astrology are different um, studies for a reason. Because in astrology, Pluto's alive and fucking well.
right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like they made it not a planet, but then they kind of backtracked and was like, oh shit, right? Because
Yeah.
he came up and was like, excuse me.
Yeah, no, I'm still here.
So the happy medium would be a dwarf planet, right? Like that's way everybody can keep their pride in check.
Right.
Because astronomers can't be like, oh, we made a mistake. Just kidding. Pluto is a planet. They're like, okay, fine. It's a planet, but it's dwarf.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the energy it's giving.
Right.
Okay, well, it's a
Right.
dwarf planet then.
Fine. Ugh.
So Pluto's going to be all about this is like power, rebirth, transformation, and evolution. It can be very destructive, but only in the sense that something has to be torn down before anything new can be built in this place. Are we seeing like a kind of like a trend with these transcendental planets? Because I
Oh my
am
God, they're tearing everything fucking down for
and
sure.
rebuilding all of it.
Right. They're like, nope, we don't like it.
Goodbye. New.
Goodbye.
Next. So this is like
But that's also why they're so slow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like yes,
Dude,
they are about destruction and transformation and all that stuff, but like they're slow at it.
could you imagine
Bleh,
if this was a fast moving thing? Dude, our heads would be spinning.
Well, technically, it would already be generations of it. We would probably get used to it, I guess. But like, because it's so slow, we get a chance to kind of settle down and go. And then somebody fucks with our shit, and we're like, God damn it. I
Yeah.
just sat down.
Just sat down. So the nice thing about Pluto is like the metamorphosis is what we got to look at. Like, yes, there's going to be chaos, but you're going to emerge from it new and better, right? So, like in your natal chart, it's going to show you like how you view power and how you're likely to manipulate those around you too, because like nothing comes without a shadow side. So it can also tell us about our darkest obsessions, our hidden jealousies and resentments as well. But on the like light side, it can reveal your inner powers and like your extraordinary ability to transform yourself to keep evolving. And it's also
So
oh, go ahead.
then, uh, in my chart, what would that look like?
So,
For example.
um, where'd you go? Right there. So so that's the other thing. Let me really quick before we get into your chart because there was something else that I read that was like, um, because Pluto has like a very erratic orbit, it spends varying amounts of times in each zodiac. It's not so like set in stone like the other ones. For example,
Oh,
Pluto will spend like
interesting.
11 to 12 years working its way through Scorpio, but then spend 32 years heading toward through Taurus.
Oh, wow.
So because it spends so long in any given zodiac sign, the planet's said to have that generational influence as well as personal ones, but because of Pluto's house position in your birth chart, because of all that, Pluto's position in your birth chart, it's going to matter about the house. That's going to be the important part for you personally as opposed to generationally because like it's just so erratic. It just does what it
Interesting.
fucking wants.
That's so interesting. I never knew that.
I did not either, and reading that makes so much more sense because I'm
Do
like,
you do you think it's because it's not very um the gravitational pull would be less than out that far and that like it
yeah, because I think Neptune is actually our second planet outside of Jupiter that has the biggest gravitational pull, and Pluto doesn't really have
have
that.
one, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Um, so like your house, what is the house your Pluto's in?
My first house.
So yeah, I remember reading this to you. Um, okay, so like you're born with the engine of metamorphosis because it's in your first house, which is intrinsically selfhood. You may act as a kind of battery of change for everyone who comes into your life. And when a relationship ends, your ex is inspired to go to rehab, make their dreams come true, or get serious about love. By knowing you, they've been transformed. Meanwhile, you're left exhausted and used up of for like they've used up all of your metamorphic powers once again. So like with
Hmm.
Pluto being in the first house, you have to be sure you're protected so that everyone doesn't feel entitled to drain your charge. And like it's going to be more about who you want to share your power with and on what terms.
It's interesting because like it is definitely played a pattern in my life. And of course I go back and go, what did I do wrong?
Yeah,
I'm always like, oh shit. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. And then what I'm doing is basically natural in my state.
right. Yeah, and
Hmm.
that's just like Pluto, man. Pluto.
Pluto.
Mine
Jesus.
is in the ninth house, and traditionally, the ninth house is considered the house of God, right? Where we go to
Hmm.
seek answers to life's bigger questions, either through faith,
Hmm.
study, travel, or higher consciousness. So it says you'll be sent on many voyages to make sense of life, and your question of why may be more than the normals in your life can handle, which
Right.
has been a huge theme. I can't talk to many people about like my whys and like the things I question and believe in because like
Right.
be throwing some people over their mental threshold sometimes. But
Hmm.
in wrestling with God, the universe, your higher power, whatever you want to call it, you'll again and again surrender your false control over reality, respawning into humility, grace, and acceptance of your place in a bigger orbit, which again is why um the power of now was such a big book for me
Right. Right.
because of my Pluto being in the ninth house.
Hmm.
Now, generationally, what is your Pluto sign in?
Pisces. I'm sorry. Libra.
Libra. Pluto in Libra was between 1971 and 1984, and we can see generational Pluto influence here in the laid back hippie generation and in the challenge to establish society, which came from increased sexual freedom, drugs, and youth culture. Our view of relationship changed with this influence too. To where my Pluto is in Scorpio, which is between 1984 and 1995, and the scudo-plutonic influence on this generation can be seen through the emergence of HIV and the race to find a treatment or cure. This generation's witnessed an increased fascination with the occult and spirituality, and it's being charged now with fixing a society which in some cases is on the point of collapse.
Right, which and we can see this playing out right now with like transgenders and uh Black Lives Matters and all of those kind of structures that were put in place, they're now being torn down and like open-minded about it. Like they're creating more of a society. They're trying to is create more of a society that is accepting of all things.
Of cult, a spirituality of people, just I feel like humans in
Right.
general, right? Yeah.
Right, right. Because this is also I feel like the generation that has seen like the Catholic Church kind of take a downside too.
Hmm.
Like there were a lot of secrets that have come out, and I feel like um, the movement in the Catholic Church is um, starting to wane at this point because of the stuff they're not wanting to deal with, but like um so many people are getting out of like that toxic relationship and going into and servicing themselves in their own God way,
Yeah, absolutely.
which really is what Jesus wanted anyway, but that's
Right.
my opinion. Sorry, my opinion.
Also mine. I would agree with that.
Right.
Opinions are like buttholes. We all have one.
That's right.
When Pluto's in retrograde, it's important. This is when it's important to turn inwards though and do shadow work. This is when it's going to really hit
Right.
home for you. Is when it's from retrograde for your sign. It's not going to be so much generational as much as it's going to be personal at that point. It's going to show
Mm-hmm.
you like who you truly are, all your little nasty bits, and it's going to give you a chance to work on self-improvement. So the positive expressions of Pluto are going to be like renewal and regeneration and transformation, evolution, rebirth, hidden gifts, and inner resourcefulness. Now, the challenging expressions are going to be abuse of power, manipulation, obsession, secrecy, jealousy, destruction, violence, and resentment. Also, Pluto rules Scorpio, so.
Yes. I was trying to look up if Pluto is in retrograde right now,
Hmm.
and I think it is. In retrograde. Okay, so I think,
Yes.
isn't it in retrograde right now?
Uh-huh.
May 2nd to present, right?
Yep, it lasts until October 11th of this year.
Well, this makes fucking sense.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Ugh.
So with
Welcome to
Pluto, make
Pluto.
sure you guys look at what house it's in and what Pluto in that house looks like. There's a ton of information out there. You can pick whatever resonates with you, but um, that's the Pluto in your house right now, and Mercury being, or Pluto being in retrograde. Mercury is also in retrograde, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's gonna show you what you need to work on internally. Mine is
Would
my
this be another
existence.
aspect, the higher aspect of Mars?
I didn't see anything about that, and I was wondering that too.
It almost makes sense that it
I,
would be.
it for me too. Like I read this part where it said collaborating with Pluto, and it says in no subtle terms, Pluto is God, and its placement in your chart indicates where you struggle with power, control, and fate. And I'm like, hello, Mars. And in the tarot, Pluto's represented by judgment and death cards and takes on the mother and destroyer goddess Kali, the gods Hades and Dionysus as well. And I'm like,
All right.
okay, wait, isn't that Mars? Isn't this all, maybe this is the higher version of Mars?
That's what I was thinking. Because to me, it would make sense. And it goes in order.
Like, yeah,
And we all like a good order.
we do like a good order. Now, are the transcendental planets in the Kabbalah?
No, because at the time, they didn't have anything to see the rest of the planets. They
Oh,
didn't
yes, because
find Uranus until like the 1700s, I think.
yeah, it didn't they ended the furthest they could see was Saturn, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's with the naked eye.
I remember talking about that last time now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious. So I was like, huh, I don't really see anything, you get like all the stuff on the Greek or Roman, and I don't see anything
Mm-hmm.
about like the Kabbalah.
No, I think eventually maybe it'll evolve, but there are those it's a very it's a very traditional thing, and I think some people have tried to mess with it a little bit where they actually put Hokmah as Neptune, I think.
Hmm.
And then the higher one was, or maybe you're, I don't know, but that is not how it goes.
That ain't it.
That ain't it.
That ain't it.
Mm-mm.
That ain't it.
Because there are three Sephiroths that do not have like planet things.
Hmm.
Da'ath, which is the invisible Sephiroth. It's like where the bridge to the abyss, basically. And that one does not have a planet. Hokmah does not have a planet, but it is associated with the zodiacs, the whole chart.
Hmm.
So the zodiacs somewhat have been a correspondent to that. And then Kethra is Kether is really just the uh existence or the manifestation of pure of God, of the light form.
Hmm.
So yeah, no.
Okay. So yeah, no.
So yeah, no.
You know.
Mhm, you know.
Um, yeah, I think that's all I got for Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. Next we've now finished the planets, and now we move into the signs.
And if you wanted, what I suggest, if you guys want to look at your planets, which after this, I really think you should, because I had no idea. This was very opening to me and to you.
Okay.
And there are a lot of stuff on the, get a reading. Um, have somebody explain that to you. You could do a little research on TikTok is a great place and just go through a couple of them and see what they say. And then figure out what hits right for you. Um, or start, with some books or stuff like that and see where that leads you.
Yeah, and I feel like this is also a good time to journal, because this is a lot of information. I mean, we literally broke this up over what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that are all like an hour and a half long.
As long as I've been studying all of the occult, it's taken me this long to just know what I know right now. And I know a very small amount, and that's taken me since 2013. And I still have just scratched the surface. Like, I still am like, I haven't even gotten in there in depth
Yeah.
because there's so much more. Even talking to like Spencer was a good one to talk to because he um he would say stuff that I was like, wait, what's that? Like, there's so much more into it, in depth of it, that it's crazy. It's just
Yes.
so much bigger than what we really expect.
Yeah, when we're going through this right now, it's like we're literally scratching the surface and getting a microscopic amount from the surface.
Hmm.
It's a big subject. Astrology is a really big subject.
Right, right. Because then even then you have to, um, if you look at your chart today, because they have a progressive chart. So what they do is they take your birth chart and every year that you were born, they move it 1 degree. So it has an accurate meaning of like where your life is today compared to where it was when you were born.
And you can do it with partners and friends. They can look at there's just a lot.
Rabbit hole. There you go.
Rabbit holes.
Well, and that's the whole thing. That's why they have these people that are dedicated to it, to studying it, so you can go visit them and give them money and support their lifestyle because you're so grateful for them to give them your knowledge. Like, because I tell you what, I know a little bit to be dangerous, but I don't know enough to like quit my job as a hairdresser. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I sure do. So I'll
Hmm.
get questions and I'm like, that's above my pay grade, baby.
Right. And furthermore, like if I read your chart, there'll be stuff that we've missed. because I don't even know what I don't know.
Girl, I ain't even gonna read your chart.
Well,
Because
no, I'm not, but like,
I'm like, listen, I can't read it. I can't read it like that.
no,
You can tell me what it is, and I know it. I'll give you a little, just a tiny little one piece of salt.
absolutely.
I can give you one speck of salt.
Well, and I know that because I have been listening to Know Thyself. I so want to right now say I know myself. And I've had to like stop that before I said it twice now. I'm like, no, that's not it. Like
So
I'm in my
good.
head, like, no, that's not it. That's not how you say it.
When I listen to, I know myself.
I know myself.
Period.
Um,
I know myself, period.
Daniel is a really excellent astrologer, and he has a website that you can book a reading on. It's a little pricey, but he does take payments. But it's a really in-depth, like 3 hour thing. It's
Yeah.
not just like a wham bam and thank you, ma'am. It's like he takes his time.
I want a reading from them and so damn bad.
Seriously.
So bad. And then I get to also fangirl for a minute and be like, your podcast changed my life.
I know, right?
That's all I'll say. I'll stop. But just so you know, your podcast changed my life. It's so good.
Oof.
Should get paid for ads for them. Anyways.
Absolutely.
Next week we go into the signs, and our first stop is going to be the air signs. Woo baby.
Woo woo woo.
So, you got anything else for the peoples?
I got nothing for the peoples.
All right. We'll see you peoples next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.